Okay, so hello, my name is Marissa Black, and I am the Idea Liaison for the BHN DPG. So today I just kind of wanted to go over different resources and ways to get involved. And the resources are intersecting with the 4 different pillars of the BHN. So you can see here that IDEA is an acronym that we use that describes inclusion, diversity, equity, and access. So this just tells you a little bit about IDEA. I have a lot of questions sometimes, like on the discussion board, asking what we define as diversity in the academy, and it's very broad. So you can see that it encompasses, ability. So that's huge for the BHN, obviously. Age, culture, ethnicity, gender, and gender identity, and sexual orientation, race and ethnicity, size, socioeconomic. So it's really broad. And I am the Idea Liaison for BHN, but each DPG member interest group and affiliate group has one. So I believe I want to say there are 70 Idea Liaisons for the Academy right now. So I've linked to the hub for the Idea, Academy Idea committee. So that is where they put all their resources and different news in case there's, some event going on or there was an event that they're highlighting, different opportunities coming up. And then I just included a link to an article that describes the Academy's commitment in the past and the future to improving diversity and equity and inclusion and access. So all of the IDEA words. So it describes the current action plan and the framework and why it's important to us. So this is the action plan all blown up. And you can see there's 4 different goals that the Academy is really focusing on to improve diversity and inclusion. So just having the infrastructure and resources to be able to promote diversity and inclusion. One of the big ones is recruitment and retention of in diabetics like education, because we can't really improve the representation in our field if we don't start from that level, because diverse dietitians aren't just going to like magically appear. Then we have just fostering a culture of respect and cultural competence. And then the research that really focuses on understanding things like inequities in health. So starting off with resources. And first, there are just some general resources. So some books that sort of cover general how to talk about race, how to handle different situations that might occur in the workplace that might be sort of uncomfortable, and sort of teases out some appropriate responses. And the second one is by Sabrina Strings, and I think in our community, she's very popular in that this book really focuses on the history and kind of sociological perspective of race and sizeism. So it's a really interesting look at like an historical perspective of how different bodies were tied to race and were stigmatized. Then some general online resources on discovering implicit bias. So this is very important, I think, because in our field, we might not even realize we have biases, but there might be something that's kind of unconscious that we might interfere with how we interact with our clientele. So one thing that's really not popular, but common in our field is sizeism. So that's something that you might not even realize that you harbor, but this testing is like a visual type of test that helps you figure out where you are and, preference for one thing or another. And there's like 15 different categories that includes things like age and skin color and size and shape as well. So other general resources, kind of focusing on health equity. I really like this, diversifying my plate, because it shows food from a kind of cultural perspective and how different cultures can still fit into our my plate patterns. So it's written by different like members of different communities, like indigenous communities or Latin American cultures, and it kind of just tells some more information about their cultural foods and how they can still be healthy.
It's kind of cool. I use the diabetic plate method sometimes with people, and when I pull up the images for them, there's one for the diabetic plate method. I don't think I've ever seen one specifically for my plate though, so that's really cool.
Yeah, so it's great, and I like how it's like informed by people that are like actually from the community. So it's really showing that I think sometimes people say like, oh, you know, Chinese food's bad for you, but like no, if you look at their like actual cultural, like what they're eating, it can be very healthy. So it kind of shows you that like every
Very
culture
different than our Chinese
pattern.
restaurant.
Yeah, different from like the Americanized version.
Yeah.
And then a few CEU opportunities. The first one's a journal article, so you just have to be signed in to the academy. And it's talking about how understanding health equity and like access to food and nutrition services is kind of an ethical point. So it's all about like the intersection of like ethics and nutrition. And then the second one is on the Eat Right store. So it's all about idea and unconscious bias, cultural competency, cultural humility. So that's an opportunity for 1.5 CEUs, but it is something you have to pay for. And the rest of the resources are more specific to our pillars of the BHN. So sharing with different resources in eating disorders. So there are some books and online resources that wanted to share. And I did just want to point out that these resources are not just all my personal collection. They're something that the BHN leadership compiled. So it's all of our leadership that, you know, specializes in different, in all of these pillars. So I just wanted to point out that it was a collaborative effort. But so the first book on here is really interesting because it's a personal account of a Black woman who had bulimia, who struggled with bulimia. And so it shows some of the personal, you know, backgrounds that led her to develop this, and kind of how she used it as a sense of control in her life. But I did want to point out that it has really graphic depictions of her eating disorder. So just kind of as a trigger warning, just to keep that in mind. And then the next book is an account of different women from all sorts of different backgrounds, so different races, ethnicities, and also sexual orientation. So it's their description of eating disorders. And then the last one is more of a clinical guide, so not so much a firsthand account. And then online resources from the one from Nita is great because it talks about the intersection of eating disorders and all different types of identities. So even like athletes or people of, you know, advanced, like middle and advanced age, like how eating disorders can develop whenever, but also specifically like BIPOC groups and the LGBTQ community as well, like their unique struggles and some of the some different things that might make them more prone to developing eating disorders. And of course, from the Trevor Project, which is an organization I love, which their goal is to end suicide in LGBTQ community and youth. So they have a good account of LGBTQ youth and their experience with eating disorders. That's it's I think a research brief based off of research that they did. So then with IDD, There are a few books that are specifically on disability activism. So the first one is great because this organization, Sins Invalid, they have a lot of just good resources for disability activism. And one thing that they have on their website that I really love is a coloring book that shows like people in wheelchairs and people from like different racial backgrounds. And so it's just really great if you have a community that you work with. That I used to work at mental health facility, and they love to color. So
Yeah,
it's a great resource too.
that's good to know, actually. Tell me
Yeah.
what it was again.
Yeah, the Sins Invalid. So the first
This one.
book that the website that they have is really great. And the second one is Disability Visibility Anthology that tells different stories of people from different backgrounds that have disabilities. And a lot of online resources that kind of deal with the intersectionality of not only having a disability, but also coming from racial or ethnic sort of minority background. So different challenges that might arise. So the first one is the Disability Project is about like leadership.
When I go get it real quick, keep going, okay.
Oh yeah. So it's not actually, this one's actually not about racial ethnic specifically. It's the intersection between like the LGBTQ community and disability. And then the rest are, I believe, more specifically, racial and ethnic groups that experience disabilities. And then with mental health, the first book here that's listed is like a firsthand account again of different LGBTQ people who have struggled with mental health, and they have provided a collection of essays and art that deals with their kind of expresses their experience. And the second book is interesting because it's another like historical account of how the Black community has been represented in mental health due to different like civil rights activism, how it was mistaken as psychosis. So it's very interesting, like historical account, and also kind of sheds light on maybe some distrust that that community might have for mental health treatment.
Sure, yeah, that title caught my eye when I was going through your slideshow earlier. I was going to grab that one. That's
Yeah. So then online resources, talking about a lot of different issues like just trauma, racial trauma, like things like microaggressions that can build and become traumatic experiences. So this NAMI one is specific to cultural aspects of mental health. Yeah, so they're all kind of dealing with that, again, intersectionality. And then finally, for our addictions pillar, there are a couple books that talk about, again, this intersectionality. And the second one is not a physical book, it's a free online book but I just included it there because it's several hundred pages long, I believe. And then a few different online resources again that talk about experiences, mostly in different racial and ethnic groups and substance use disorders, and how to make a more inclusive space. And then the last one is a guide to preventing substance use among LGBTQ communities. So again, kind of talking, some of these resources do talk about more specifically the LGBTQ community and their kind of disproportionate rates of substance use disorder too. Great. So next we have some information on how to get involved with the IDEA efforts. And one great way is through academy organizations. So this affinity group that I have listed, the Health, Equity, and Diversity group, the affinity groups are kind of more based on policy and activism. So this one's focusing on health, equity, and diversity, and they do meet every month, and the time's listed there. So there is a link to register for that meeting, but there's also a community here that you can join that's more like the discussion board type of community. So even if you can't attend these meetings, you can still join this. And also member interest groups. So a lot of different cultures are represented in this. And I know a lot of people think that these are only for those specific cultures, but they're, for the most part, really inclusive, and kind of show, if you have an appreciation for learning more about nutrition in these communities, then these groups are really great to join because they have a lot of like webinars and different like resources and handouts and things that you can use. One thing I would say is just some of the opportunities, like if there's like a scholarship, or like an opportunity for speakers. Sometimes they do want that to be limited to people that are members of that group, just because there might be opportunities that they might not normally have.
Sure. Yeah.
Yeah. And I did want to highlight this disabilities, nutrition, and dietetics group. That's a new group that's coming. So very exciting. So for dietitians with disabilities, dietitians that work with people that have disabilities, or just people who are interested in that community and learning more. And then I listed other organizations that aren't affiliated with the Academy. So Diversify Dietetics is great as a community that really wants to diversify dietetics, make it a more diverse space. So they really provide a lot of help, especially for like students and early professionals with like the internship process and like finding housing if you are doing an internship far away, and provide also scholarships and opportunities. And then this is a social media campaign that I just recently heard about, the hashtag Inclusive Dietetics Facebook group. So they also kind of spread awareness of efforts that can increase diversity. Also kind of keep you updated on some of like the political landscape, like which states are not allowing you to even say diversity and inclusion and like government sponsored things. So that's really interesting if you want to like keep up with what's going on like in the country.
Interesting. I hadn't heard of them.
Yeah, I don't use Facebook all that much, but when I heard about this, I joined, so it's pretty neat. And then finally, some grants and awards that can sort of motivate you to be more involved by like creating different projects that can, increase things like recruitment. So the Idea Action Award is $1,000, and it's given for like in honor of past accomplishments to recruit and retain diverse individuals. The Idea Promotion Grant is more for like current projects. So it's a lot more, it's 10,000. So this is like for like an education, accredited educational organization or one of the like DPGs, affiliates, or MIGs, in order to like help them recruit and retain diverse individuals. So it's quite a lot. And then the mini grants are up to 1,000, but they're specifically submitted by the Idea Liaisons. So every year, we post on the discussion board to see if there are any ideas that our community would like to hear more about, anything that they'd like us to kind of plan a program based off of, and then we submit a mini grant. Yeah, so this is more broad, and it's not just recruitment, but also just supporting like cultural sensitivity programs. So these applications, unfortunately, are due in March each year, so that deadline's passed. But if you're interested in doing like a program that can increase the recruitment of diverse people in the field of nutrition and dietetics. You can put that on your calendar for next March. Or if you have any ideas for the BHN specifically, you can always share those, and I take them into account for the future projects.
So is that something that they just find your email and send you to, or is there somewhere in particular they need to submit those?
Oh, yeah, so these are all linked to like the website that where they can submit those. But yeah, I think you have to be logged in to like the academy to see them. But the mini grant, like if you have any recommendations or something you'd like to see in the future, you can always just write on the discussion board or send me an email. So the upcoming news and the BHN. This is so the mini grant that we actually did look at the discussion board, and somebody recommended doing training for the executive committee, and we submitted the grant and received that funding. So we will actually be doing that training to improve the executive committee's understanding of different idea topics. So that's the Just Roots Consulting Inclusive Leadership Training, which covers a lot of great topics like disrupting your bias and using more inclusive language. And then based off of this training, we're hoping to provide future office hours that will kind of synthesize some of these topics and provide just a little bit of training to our members. So the date and time's not yet been decided on, but just keep an eye out for the fall 2023 office hours, where we will be sharing some of this great training with y'all. Then I listed my contact information here in case anybody has any questions. You can always contact me here, or also through the discussion board. I check those posts pretty regularly. Yeah.
Thank you.
I think that's everything.
All right, awesome.
And I'll post this on the discussion board too, so that the resources, since they're all links, people will be able to
click on them.
Awesome.
All right, thank you. I'm gonna stop the recording maybe.